So if you're doing DCI with SAN, you'll typically need a MUXPON that takes that SAN interface or that fiber channel or InfiniBand or whatever they're using, IBM, the flavor of their week. And that thing has to be put into a transponder to convert to OTU and take up on one, right? Also, when we start talking about more long haul solutions, even though 400 gig ZR optics ultra long haul exist, spectrally they might not be as efficient because now, so what starts happening is you start playing with modulation. Modulation impacts spectral width. Spectral width. If you have to take your bit error of your link speed from 400 gig to 300 gig, now suddenly you're using a wide channel for less capacity. So transponders are a bit more efficient when they do that. I don't have a bunch of diagrams. I'm just scared the guys say I'm selling a product, so I'm not going to show anything. I'll just talk you through it quickly. So transponders you get in many forms and flavors. So you get transponders, like I said earlier today, which are plug holders. They are QSFP interface on the one side, QSFP interface on the other side, and it takes a gray interface and makes it a colored interface at its simplest form. Many times these don't even have any FEC on them or anything like that. It's a plug holder. Then you start moving into transponders with CFPs. Who knows what a CFP is? So some of you might have seen, I don't know, a picture of one, but CFP is this massive plug. The reason it's so massive is because of the DSP on it. Typically CFPs had 23 nanometer DSPs on them. They are pretty power hungry. They are big, they are expensive. A CFP cage on any device. I don't know if I'll stick to Juniper because that's the thing I know the best. I don't know if anyone has ever seen a PIX interface on a Juniper, the PIXs. So they've got CFP cages. The price jump from a QSFP interface to a CFP is massive. It is expensive. CFP cages are more power hungry. They've got more stuff. So transponders with CFPs, they typically have longer range DSPs. Also, same type of format. It could be a 100 gig interface, it could be an 800 gig interface, and it could be a 1.6 terabyte interface, depending on the DSP on it. That is typically what you would see on a transponder. So it will have QSFP or SFP interfaces facing the client. It will have some form of FEC on it, GFEC, EFEC, OFEC, and then a DSP. Efficient devices out there, you get what they call, I don't have pictures of them, but I'm sure you can Google them. Get what they call one-click cleaners. It literally cleans the optic. So you click it in there and it's clicky, and it cleans the optic itself on the inside of the IBF. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then you get your actual cartridges that you clean the patch feed with. The days of carrying a bottle of alcohol and a bunch of skin wipes. Skin wipes. Those days are past. There are, Asha has some good examples. So this is very inexpensive, right? This is really not an expensive piece of kit to have in your toolbox. Even if you are not running WDM, even if you're just running 1310 dark fiber, this will help you. You click it, sorry for some wasting words. You click it, it's got a little cartridge with alcohol swabbed chem wipe inside. Every time you click it, you'll hear it ratchet and it will bring a new piece of clean lappy for you. Palega lappy, close. Done. Next one, open. Put it in. Guys, every time you unplug an optic, please clean the thing. It will save your life, it will save everybody. And I can also promise you, here's your one click. There's a reason I have you here. This is one click. This is what you use to clean an optic. Because you're not going to put the earbud in an optic. Please don't. Ever in your life. or blow into an object. If there are people in this room that will, in plain Afrikaans, hulle gaan vir jou te lyf gaan. Tashet means they'll get physical. Don't blow into an optic. Never a good idea. Don't use compressed air into an optic. Also not a good idea. It is a piece of precision equipment, people. It's not your Game Boy cartridge that you had 20 years ago. Yeah. And even that wasn't good for that device. So cleaning, if I can leave you, if you take anything away today, just clean your bloody fibers. And I think Oki will also, you get guys with O3Rs where they haven't cleaned that O3R. So he takes your clean plug, plugs it into his dirty plug on his O3R and then plugs it back into your system. Without cleaning it. Cleaning is 80% of the battle.
And it's not, you're not exaggerating. There's studies over and over again. I mean, it's patchy, connected. That's where the problem is.
When you can, sorry, Brahmanas, you can ask directly. I mean, we've on one of the networks in this country, they just clean the fibers and already the ocean are improved. Yeah. Just by cleaning the fibers.
It is
multiple.
It is, if you take a scope, so one of the ways to check if an optic or a patch lead is clean is you take a fiber scope. I've seen some fiber scopes where the thing is just black, or there's scratches and cracks across the optic. It's insane. And guys, like I say, yes, it might not be a very expensive component, but it is a piece of precision equipment. So clean your fibers. That is a very, very important thing. And proactively look at your WDM system. Let the guys do a 3R test at least once a year. Okay, so you'll see, I'll try and zoom this. You'll see that dark circle. That's the center of the optic.
What's that?
Or the red are all the specks of dirt and dust and spit and whatever you can imagine floats around in the green. The green is also same. But so this optic probably caused you 4 or 5 hours worth of effort, right? And it was probably a day's worth of downtime for the customer before it was done.
That's not a bad one.
No, this is still good. So it is important, but best practices when operating your network should always be that, because the better your OSNR, the less you have to regenerate your signal electrically. The less you have to regenerate your signal electrically, the cheaper your cost per bit. Because that's what makes WDM good, is your cost per bit. And the amount of bits you can pass across that system is high. So get your cost per bit low, and you have a system that will give you a good customer base. That said, I thank you all for listening to my ramblings. If you want to stick around, we can quickly physically show you all the components of the WDM system on this, and just show you where what plugs in and how it looks and everything. We're not going to boot up. But guys, any questions? Tasha and I will be here the whole week. We will, when we share the slides, our emails will be in there. So we're always happy to have a conversation. It's like 40% of my job is to do this. So always ready to talk WDM with people.
Yeah, hi. If you don't mind, would you I'm Collins from Kenya, East Park, Kenya. Yeah, that place where the elephants go.
But it wasn't a bad example. It was an African example.
It's a perfect example. Because I mean, halfway between the coast, Thailand and Nairobi. The park on both sides of the road, whichever way you look at it.
Regardless if it's KPLC or LG, yeah.
Absolutely, you have to do with it on the road. But my question is on amplifying the WDM of single fiber. I mean, if you don't mind, at what cost, or at what,
Okay, so the concept's the same, right? You still have EDFAs, you still have it in a so booster and pre-amplifier method. The difference is when you do single fiber working, is after your mux, you're actually combining your send and receive signals again. So you've got an additional filter, it's called a blue-red filter, that does that. Like I said, that also said, because you're co- and counter-propagating signals, your power that you put into the fiber can't be as high. Well, needs to be high, needs to be high. Higher boost on a fiber leads to less spectrum availability. So you can push as much power into the fiber as you want to, but because you're pushing so much, your spectral efficiency becomes less because you're introducing more noise, because overboosting introduces noise. So you start pulling your spectrum less because there's signal crosstalk and nonlinear impairments. So nonlinear impairments affect OSNR, and that has to do with the balance of the system. That has to do with the noise figures. It has to do with the balancing of power. Does the system introduce tilt, or how much tilt and dispersion is there in your signals? So the single fiber working, you don't have full use of the spectrum. You don't have your full C-band spectrum availability, and your channels tend to be a bit more sensitive. It is cheaper because one fiber is cheaper than two fibers, but your cost per bit increases. So it's, as Tashi very eloquently put, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So you can cut the cost here, but you're paying for it in the long run. So that's why choosing the type of architecture, looking at what your network has to do and what type of services are you doing, are there services connected, are there SLAs connected? That should define how and what you do when you do your network. So if it's your traffic and you know your growth is going to be minimal, you're not going to ever exceed 400 gigs, and you're happy to regenerate traffic every few hundred kilometers, single fiber working might make sense. If it's a high growth network, high capacity, it's not going to scale as efficiently as it would. Your cost per bit might be higher. Yeah, the concepts stay the same. There are just, like we say, no free lunch. So if you do certain things, it impacts something else.
does it mean amplifying a very long
So typically single fiber working solutions are seen in data center interconnects, and typically only two-span type of solutions, and where fiber is hard to come by, or you need a lot of it. So that's where you would see single fiber working typically. It has become a thing in Africa because of the cost of fiber, where guys do use single fiber working a lot. Because I mean, if you look at what the fiber costs, it's like R1 a meter or something like that. Fiber's not cheap, but for a few cents a meter, I won't remember the exact math. I don't want to oust any fiber operators right now. But there's a cost associated with it. So one fiber is cheaper than two fibers. But like I said, your trade-off is you might need to regenerate your traffic more often. So you have to go back to the electrical layer to reset the OSNR level to go out again. So every time you do this, you're adding traffic components, and those traffic components have a cost point. And it's for the same traffic. So you're regenerating, which increases your cost per bit. And if you're selling services, you want your cost per bit to be low, and your customer, you want to add some 80% margin, right? Like most of you guys do. But so your cost, if you're selling traffic, your cost per bit needs to be low. And you want to make more efficient use of the spectrum. Because if the C-band, the 4.9 terahertz allows me to do 22 terabits of traffic, why would I half that just to buy cheaper fiber? But like I said, you can do that, but there are trade-offs. But all these things have fun things.
To get the first part of his question. So are you saying the EDFA is bidirectional?
No. So what you'll do is you'll have the the physical setup, Ryan, just keep me honest because I haven't done a lot of single fiber working ones, right? So they have a filter or max. You'll have so let's call it the blue filter, that's your max. Then you'll have your red filter, that's your D-max. Then you'll have your amplifier on the a booster amplifier, a preamplifier. Then you'll have a filter that combines those two signals into this single fiber working. But now, like we said, anything you introduce, if it's a passive component, has an optical budget impact. But yeah, you don't get amplifiers that do both directions. So configuration stays the same basically, but you introduce an additional filter component or an additional mux component now to combine your RX and TX signals to a single fiber, which then comes with its fun challenges.
So you can use master to do pilots involved. I think the only problem with current interfaces is you have to, because with direct detect you can do filters to do all the talking, but coherent is it's tunable. Now you receive the DSP and transmit to one frequency and see another frequency.
No, because that's the challenge, right? Is your transmit sits on one side of the frequency range and your receive sits on the other side. So typically they come in like pairs.
Yeah.
So there's one adjacent frequency, there's one adjacent frequency to do that. But it comes with its trade-offs. I typically am not a big fan of it unless you really have to in a data center interconnect. That said, there are guys that build metro networks and transmission networks like that, and they always complain. It's always a challenge. But it's one you might have a scenario where the guys had a single fiber break on a pair of fiber, and now that single piece of fiber doesn't have a friend to be sold with it, so they'll give you that single fiber cheaper than they would a solution. And that happens. It happens. We've in South Africa have cases like that where the guys do that. But so suddenly the fiber cost becomes a lot cheaper because now you're not buying two fibers, you're buying one, and then you're getting the one fiber at the discounted rate because it doesn't have a frame. But now your optical line system becomes slightly more complex. You're much more prone to OSNR. You have to regenerate traffic much more often. You don't have rodents that do single fiber working. Don't let anyone ever tell you there are such things. So it becomes a nightmare. In a data center environment where you've got two span ops and you need to do something like that, there is a place for it. But typically in a mesh or linear network or a metro network, transfer away from it. But I know in Kenya you guys have challenges with fiber, so in many cases that is the only option. I mean, most operators in Kenya and in Ghana and those places do single fiber working. Yeah. But the challenge then is as they typically do it on direct detect, very little coherent, and when it becomes coherent, it becomes much more complicated. And then also the scalability, right? Because you'll stay stuck at the 800 gig capacity or a 1.6 terabyte capacity for that total line system. It's not scaling. Guys aren't really investing R&D into single fiber working. I think if we look at coherent optics, only now people are looking at doing single fiber working coherent optics. I mean, these optics have been in the market for 2-3 years now. And for dual fiber, but only now people are looking at bringing SFW coherent optics up. QSFP wise. CFPs exist, but CFP is expensive. And like I said, you're more prone to regenerate traffic. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time. I hope you've learned something. If you haven't, blame Tashi. Or blame the organizers for putting me here. I thought I was incapable enough. Sweet, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
You don't have to go home. You also don't have to stay here. Thanks. I just want to say thanks to Tashi flying all the way from Brisbane. Thanks, Portia, for sorting this out. This was Portia's brainchild, FYI. And this was done over this idea came about over a glass of wine at Africa Pop. And I think there was a napkin and a crayon involved. But thanks, Portia, for organizing this, and thanks for everybody in your time.